Go for it. So, Prime Minister, I would like to add some footnotes for this. First, all of my information has been archived with the British Library since 2013 and with the Stratford Perth County Archive since 2015. I used to send it to the Parliamentary Library, but I was advised that most of this information would probably disappear. The New York Times and the Toronto Star have followed this story for a long time. And as one of their journalists said, I don't doubt your facts, but it would be a hard story to write. We usually wait for someone to finish the book, and then we write the story. Well, it's going to take a long time to finish the book, and I am very fortunate to have recently met Sébastien Clermont, a young documentary filmmaker who landed in the Chicxulub crater a few days ago, and he's helping me tell the story. The soldiers and veterans and their families have a right to know the truth. Now, if you won't tell the truth, I will tell the truth. I would rather you tell the truth, because then they will understand that you have been treated fairly in this reporting process. Many years ago, some senior officers who were helping me with this research asked me to, finish the book. They said, you don't have everything, you won't have everything, and people need to know. And I replied by saying, look, I understand you, but until I have this story nailed down so tight, I can't make it public beyond the limited audience that has been receiving my emails, because it would create more problems. Ottawa is a corporate casino, and there are very powerful corporate interests involved in this story. One is the insurance industry, and the other is the pharmaceutical industry. Brief history. In 1969, a small Nova Scotia-based insurance company, Maritime Life, won the contract to provide life and disability insurance for the Canadian Armed Forces. Everybody had to pay. That was 100,000 new, very healthy, young clients. And everything was fine for the insurance company, Maritime Life. During the Cold War, it was mostly garrison duty, maneuvers, no really hot fighting. But then the Berlin Wall fell, and all hell started to break loose. First there was Iraq, Gulf War I, and the Americans sent 700,000 soldiers, the Canadians 4,500, the UK 50,000, and they all had a disability rate of 20% within 2 years of the war, of the end of the war, and it was a 4-day war. And so, what caused this disability? Well, this was answered by in a medical journal article by Dr. Anthony Mawson and Dr. Ashley Croft in 2018. And the title is Gulf War Illness, the Unifying Hypothesis for a Continuing Health Problem. There's also another article in 2015 by Dr. Mary Nettleman, who was a member of the U.S. Congress Advisory Committee on Gulf War Illness. She raised many of the same issues, but it was Dr. Mawson and Dr. Croft who pulled together a vast amount of information and analyzed it and proved that the Gulf War illness was caused by a combination of factors, a large number of vaccinations in a short period of time that caused an overreaction of the immune system. In short, the immune system revved up and didn't slow down. Let me be clear, Dr. Mawson and Dr. Croft are very responsible people. They are not anti-vaxxers. They are pointing out that you can't give soldiers, when they're being prepped to go to war, 5 or 10 vaccinations in a short period of time and expect that there won't be any problems. Not only were there problems, these soldiers were given these vaccinations under very, very extreme conditions of heat and physical stress. Add to that the possibility that Gulf War veterans, some were exposed to mefloquine. This was raised in the paper by Dr. Mary Nedelin. I don't have an opinion on that matter, but it wouldn't surprise me if some of them were given clandestinely mefloquine. And obviously they didn't know they were taking mefloquine, and they didn't know the adverse effects. And most definitely soldiers or anyone shouldn't take mefloquine if they're dehydrated. And females who are on the contraceptive pill are strongly advised against taking it. And I think this may explain the disproportionately high number of female Canadian Armed Forces members who committed suicide. I want to explain to the families and the disabled soldiers and veterans that during this whole 22-year period of my research, they were not abandoned by senior officers. Senior officers, the most notable is Lieutenant General Bill Carr, former Commander of the Air Force and former Deputy Chief of Defense Staff, was instrumental in my continuing this research. And Brigadier General Joe Sharp, who presided over the inquiry in 1999, also contributed greatly, particularly his paper, The Sand Beneath Our Feet. Brigadier General Charles Bouchard wrote another paper in which he stated that General Sharp sought only to get help for the hundreds of disabled young soldiers, and he was frustrated at every turn. General Bouchard also pointed out that this health problem impacted the operations of the Canadian Forces at a strategic level. In short, it was a big problem. A comment about the media. With the exception of Sheila Pratt at the Edmonton Journal and Dominique D'Alessandro, I'm not sure if I got that right, at the Globe and Mail, the mefloquine story was never fully and accurately reported. And this is a very sad commentary on the Canadian mainstream media. The CBC, in my opinion, has blood on its hands. There was one good report, CBC TV, Nancy Wood's interview with former U.S. Army medical officer Dr. Remington Nevin in 2012, which laid out the basis of the mefloquine story. But after that, the CBC never reported it. And the CBC is where Canadians get their news. And Canadians pay the CBC to report information accurately and in a timely manner. And the CBC has failed in every respect. Very early on, I gave my research file to Murray Brewster when he was the defense correspondent for the Canadian Press. I followed up with a number of emails, and at one point I got a very angry email from Murray Brewster saying, "Mr. Henry, don't send me any more of your information until you have medical journal articles that can prove your point." So, Murray Brewster, not long after that email, became the defense correspondent for the CBC. And he never mentioned mefloquine. He never mentioned PTSD, except to sort of support a point of view of the government that the problem is caused by stress and trauma. Murray Brewster was one of the first to get the information about Lieutenant Commodore Passey's 1994 sham PTSD research. He had all the sources. It was an easy story to fact check. The CBC didn't say a word. And so, in my opinion, the CBC bears a very high level of responsibility for this tragedy. The CBC knew, and they didn't report it. My last point, 1999. After my first round of research, I called the Fifth Estate, the CBC TV investigative program, and Francine Pelletier took the call. It was a cold call. I explained who I was, I explained a bit of the history, and I gave her my contacts. She called me 2 weeks later and said, "Mr. Henry, this is the most fascinating story I have ever encountered, but it can't be told in 15 minutes. She called me later in Mexico and asked me to come to Toronto. They would pay the flight, but I wasn't very well and I couldn't make the trip. We agreed to do it, the interview when I returned in April. By April 2000, the CBC had killed the story." And I would invite any investigative journalist to review this history with Francine Pelletier and Murray Brewster and any other CBC reporters who have been following this story. The question is, was there political direction to suppress this story? One last point for the disabled soldiers, veterans, and their family. There is no treatment for the nervous system problem that you suffer from. You can get better, and I will share with you in another interview my experience and how I managed to recover from a point where I could barely walk, talk, read, or write, because I was diagnosed with the same problem that you have in 1991, and that's why I know a lot about it. And I had some of the best physicians in Canada, and they were still quite bewildered by the impact of this disease, and they were quite amazed at my partial recovery, and I will tell you that story in the next episode. Thank you.